All right, so now we have the preliminary work done. Now we're going to read the play. Now, there's a few tenets here that we need to understand about a play. Again, it's not a novel. Novels have different things. They live in different worlds. If you read Murakami or, Hemingway or anybody like that, they have different styles. Playwrights have different styles, but plays have a structure to them. There's typically a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? So there's the beginning with plot, with exposition, which we'll talk about in a second. Then it goes somewhere, there's a climax, and then it falls, and there's an ending. All right. Now, as we talked about in the first module, where does theater come from? What is theater? The Greeks were the first to kind of put plays into the structure that we have it now. It's stayed the same for centuries now. And one of the people that kind of was a great thinker, a philosopher back in Greek times, is also somebody that thought about theater a lot. Again, there was no television and film, so theater was one of the main parts of entertainment. So we have Aristotle, who's that guy. That's a sculpture, obviously, of him. It's not really him. He identified 6 parts of a play. We have plot, character, idea, language, and spectacle. Now, strap in. We're going to go for a little bit faster here, just so we can get this into one video. Now, the 6 parts of the play, we have to start with plot. Now, plot is what happens in a play. Everybody say that with me. Plot is what happens in a play. What happens, right? So, the parts of the plot are the exposition, the point of attack, action. Now within the action we have complication, rising action, and crisis, and then the falling action. Don't get overwhelmed yet, we'll get there, but the plot is what happens in the play from the beginning, the middle, to the end. Right? So in Romeo and Juliet, you have the beginning where they don't know each other, they meet each other, they fall in love, they get married, Tybalt and Mercutio die, Romeo gets banished, Juliet hatches a plan with the friar to pretend that she's dead. Romeo comes back, sees that she's not. She thinks that she's dead, even though she's not. Kills himself. She sees him, kills herself. The end. Right. So that's the plot. That's what happens in the play. So we have our exposition, which is the beginning, the giving of information about past events. Now, you read a play, and what you see there is what we just talked about, the preliminary work. So you know a lot about set, you know about the characters. Now, remember that when somebody's watching a play, that isn't given to them necessarily. So there's a lot of exposition at the beginning of plays telling us what's happened in the past. Given circumstances, past events, catch up with the play, right? These don't exist in a vacuum. There's a life for all these characters before the play starts. So the play starts with a lot of catching up. Then we have your point of attack. Now, the point of attack is the place in the story where the playwright begins the plot, really, of the play. Why is today different than any other day? So in Romeo and Juliet, we have given circumstances. There's a war between the two families, the Capulets and the Montagues. Romeo is depressed because the girl that he loves is not in love with him. We see Benvolio and Mercutio trying to cheer him up, so they take him to a party of the warring faction. There, he meets Juliet. Now that is the point of attack. The rest of the play only happens because Romeo and Juliet see each other. So that's the point of attack. Before that is kind of exposition, a lot of things about the world of the play so that we're set up for the rising action. From that moment on, the play goes from action and action until the end. So you see that in the chart here, where you have the inciting moment, then the rising action, the complication, the climax, and then you have the reversal of that. The action is simply the play's journey is contained within its action. It's when something happens that makes something else happen. Cause and effect is an action. Romeo and Juliet see each other, which makes them want to see each other again, but them meeting each other and talking to each other makes Tybalt mad at Romeo there at the party, which makes Romeo go to Juliet's house that night, later on that night, to see her on the balcony, which they talking to each other makes them meet again the next day, which makes them blah, 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 right? So an action is something that leads to something else, cause and effect. So we have the rising action. So again, action. Rising action is everything that's leading to the climax. The rising action is an action of increase, complication. So the rising action for Romeo and Juliet is something I just already talked about. They talk on her balcony. They contrive to be married. They convince the friar and the nurse to marry them. Tybalt kills Mercutio. Then Romeo kills Tybalt in revenge. This is all rising action, right? Romeo is banished. They get married. Romeo is exiled in Mantua. Juliet and the friar contrive a plan for her to seem dead so she can escape Verona. Romeo hears of Juliet's dead and goes back to Verona. Romeo kills Paris at the tomb, and then he sees Juliet there. He kills himself. Then she sees him and kills herself. All that is leading up to the climax. That's the climax, is when they see each other and kill each other. They're trying to be together, and everything in the way, there's a complication the whole time in the rising action of them not getting there. The climax is when they both kill themselves. The climax is a decisive moment or turning point in which the rising action of the play is reversed to the falling action, when Romeo and Juliet end their lives, in the case of Romeo and Juliet. Then you have the falling action. After the climax, there's the resolution and the denouement, which is a French word for the unraveling of complication. The declining action of crisis is past. Complication is resolved. So after that, you see the prince come there to the tomb after Romeo and Juliet are dead, along with the friar, the parents of both of of Romeo and Juliet, and they say, we're not going to war anymore. We're not going to fight anymore. Romeo and Juliet are together in death, but that's all that they really wanted, was to be together. They finally find their way to do that. Then you have some kind of resolution of the conflict, which is Romeo and Juliet couldn't be together because of the family's conflict. Again, we see it right there.